Your rent is 3 weeks late. The interview is in 7 minutes. Sarah's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. This isn't just another job. This is survival. One thought loops through her mind. I'm going to fail. They'll see right through me. Someone better will get it. Then she stops. She remembers something. A technique so simple it sounds stupid. She closes her eyes. She doesn't rehearse answers. She doesn't pump herself up. She does something that makes no logical sense. She assumes the job is already hers. Not hopes, not wishes, assumes. She feels herself walking back to this car in 1 hour. The offer already made. The relief flooding her body. The quiet certainty in her chest. She opens her eyes. When she walks through those doors, something is different. She's not begging. She's not performing. She's simply being the person who already has this job. 3 weeks later, she's sitting at that desk. The hiring manager told her something strange. Your energy was different. You felt like you already worked here. We were just confirming what was obvious. Sarah had stumbled onto something that changes everything. But here's what nobody tells you. What if everything you've learned about manifestation is backwards? What if trying to attract what you want is precisely what keeps it away? What if the people who seem lucky aren't doing more than you? What if they're doing less but being it more? And what if there's a shortcut that collapses years of struggle into weeks of natural unfolding? You're about to discover why your affirmations haven't worked, why your vision boards gather dust, why positive thinking feels exhausting, because you've been trying to get something you don't have. But what if you already have it? What if the only thing standing between you and your desire is a single shift in consciousness? Not a shift in your circumstances, a shift in your assumption. This is not another manifestation technique. This is the mechanism underneath all of them, the one thing that determines whether they work or fail. And by the end of our time together, you'll know how to operate it. You'll stop chasing. You'll start receiving, because you'll finally understand the shortcut. Assume and watch reality reorganize itself to match. You see, there's a problem with almost everything you've heard about creating your reality. The affirmations you repeat while not really believing them. The vision boards you make and then forget about. The endless techniques for raising your vibration while secretly feeling like you're failing at even that. All of it keeps you in the same trap. It keeps you in a state of wanting, and wanting, by its very nature, confirms that you don't have. Think about it. When you say, I want a relationship, I want financial freedom, I want confidence, what are you actually telling yourself? That you lack these things, that they're somewhere out there, separate from you, and you have to somehow pull them toward you through effort and hope and positive thinking. But what if that entire framework is backwards? What if you don't attract what you want? What if you simply receive what you've already assumed is yours? This isn't semantics. This is the difference between spending years trying to manifest something and having it show up in weeks. It's the difference between exhausting yourself with techniques and living in a state of natural flow where what you need finds you. By the end of our time together, you won't be learning how to try harder at manifestation. You'll understand how to stop trying altogether. You'll learn to operate from assumption rather than desire, and in doing so, you'll collapse the time between intention and reality. You'll discover why the people who seem to effortlessly have what they want aren't doing more than you. They're doing less, but they're being it more. So let's begin where most manifestation teachings go catastrophically wrong. Most people approach manifestation like they're placing an order with the universe. They get clear on what they want. They visualize it. They affirm it. They try to feel good about it. And then they wait and check and wonder why it's not here yet. And try a different technique and wait some more. The reason this doesn't work isn't because manifestation isn't real. It's because you're operating from the wrong state of consciousness. Every time you do an affirmation while secretly not believing it, you're not reprogramming your subconscious. You're actually reinforcing the belief that you need to convince yourself of something that isn't true yet. Every time you make a vision board and look at it with longing, you're practicing the feeling of not having. The emotional signature you're sending out isn't abundance. It's lack with pretty pictures on it. Here's what no one tells you about affirmations. They work brilliantly when you already believe what you're saying. If you affirm, I am confident in social situations, and you genuinely feel that truth, the affirmation reinforces and deepens that reality. But if you're affirming, I am wealthy, while your inner voice is screaming, but look at your bank account, you're not manifesting wealth. You're manifesting the split between who you're pretending to be and who you believe you are. And that split, that dissonance, that's what keeps your desire at arm's length. The same thing happens with trying to raise your vibration. You've probably heard that you need to be in a high vibration to attract good things, so you try to force yourself to feel positive. You blast uplifting music and watch funny videos and do gratitude lists, all while underneath there's this current of, I have to feel better so I can get what I want. Do you see the problem? You're still operating from lack. You're still treating your desire as something separate from you that you have to become worthy of receiving. Let me tell you about Marcus. He spent 2 years trying to manifest his ideal relationship. He did everything right according to the manifestation gurus. He made lists of qualities he wanted in a partner. He visualized romantic dates. He even did that thing where you sleep on one side of the bed to make room for your future person. He went to therapy to heal his wounds. He worked on his self-love. He raised his standards. And yet nothing. Every date felt forced. Every potential connection fizzled out. He was exhausted. Then one day, someone asked him a simple question. When you imagine being in your ideal relationship, do you feel like you're moving toward it or like you're remembering it? He realized he always felt like he was reaching for something in the future. Something he hoped would happen someday if he did enough personal development and put himself out there enough times. So he tried something different. Instead of visualizing to attract a partner, he started assuming he was already the kind of person who had that relationship. Not pretending, not faking it, actually shifting his identity at a core level. He started asking himself, how does a man in a deeply fulfilling relationship move through his day? He realized that version of him wasn't desperately swiping on apps, wasn't analyzing every text message for signs of interest, wasn't trying to be impressive on dates. That version of him was already full, already at peace, already living a rich life that a partner would complement, not complete. Marcus stopped trying to manifest a relationship and started living as though his relationship status was already settled in his favor. Within a month, he met someone at a bookstore. They weren't even supposed to be there that day. It was a series of small coincidences that put them in the same place at the same time. But here's the thing. Those coincidences weren't random. They were the natural result of Marcus finally assuming a different reality. He had stopped broadcasting I need someone and started embodying I am already whole, and reality reorganized itself to match that assumption. This is the fatal flaw in traditional manifestation. It treats your desire as separate from you. It makes you a beggar at the door of the universe instead of the one who determines what enters your experience. So what's the alternative? The alternative is understanding something that sounds too simple to be powerful, but it's the foundation of everything. Consciousness is the only reality. Not consciousness as some abstract spiritual concept. Consciousness as in your awareness, your sense of I am. The subjective experience you're having right now as you listen to these words. Everything you experience in the physical world is a reflection, a hardening, a crystallization of states of consciousness you have occupied. Your current circumstances, your relationships, your bank account, your health, your opportunities, all of it is your consciousness pushed out. It's the inevitable result of who you have assumed yourself to be. Now, before you dismiss this as solipsistic nonsense or spiritual bypassing, stay with me. This isn't about denying that other people exist or that the physical world is real. It's about understanding the mechanism by which your personal reality is formed. You don't see the world as it is. You see it as you are. Your assumptions about yourself and your world act as a filter that determines what you perceive, what opportunities you notice, how people respond to you, and ultimately what shows up in your experience. Here's a simple example. 2 people work at the same company. One assumes that workplaces are political and advancement requires playing games and kissing up to the right people. The other assumes that good work speaks for itself and opportunities come to those who add value. Do they have the same experience at that company? Of course not. The first person will notice every instance of favoritism, every political maneuver, every time someone gets ahead through connections rather than merit. Their assumption will be constantly confirmed. They'll also behave in ways that create more of what they expect. They'll be cynical in meetings. They'll hesitate to be genuine. They'll create subtle walls between themselves and leadership because they assume authenticity is punished. The second person with a different assumption will notice entirely different data. They'll see moments when hard work was recognized. They'll interpret setbacks as feedback rather than evidence of a rigged system. They'll show up with openness, and guess what? People will respond to that openness. Opportunities will feel easier. Not because the universe is playing favorites, but because their assumption creates a completely different set of behaviors, perceptions, and responses from others. This is what it means that consciousness is the only reality. Your assumptions don't just color your interpretation of events. They actively shape which events occur. They determine the version of reality you experience. And here's the most important part. Your assumptions harden into fact whether you consciously choose them or not. Right now, you have hundreds of assumptions running in the background of your mind. Assumptions about what's possible for you. Assumptions about how hard you have to work for things. Assumptions about whether you're lucky or unlucky, liked or overlooked, capable or limited. Most of these assumptions you didn't consciously choose. You absorbed them from your family, your early experiences, your culture, your past failures and successes. But they're running your life. They're creating your reality with ruthless consistency. The question isn't whether you're assuming things. You're always assuming. The question is whether you're going to start assuming consciously, whether you're going to take responsibility for the creative power of your own consciousness and start deliberately occupying states that produce the reality you actually want. So how do you do that? How do you shift from wanting something to assuming you already have it? This is where most people get tripped up. They think assuming means lying to themselves. If I don't have the money, how can I assume I do? If I'm single, how can I assume I'm in a relationship? Won't I just be delusional? No, because assuming the wish fulfilled isn't about denying your current circumstances. It's about occupying a state of consciousness where those circumstances are no longer true. Let me introduce you to the most important concept in this entire audiobook. The state of the wish fulfilled. This is the felt sense, the inner knowing, the quality of consciousness you would have if your desire were already realized. Not the excitement of it being new, not the relief of finally getting it after struggle. The quiet certainty of it simply being yours. The state where it's so normal, so integrated into your sense of self, that you barely think about it. Think about something you already have that you once wanted. Maybe it's a skill you now possess. Maybe it's a friendship that's now solid. Maybe it's living in a place you once dreamed of. Do you spend your days feeling grateful and amazed that you have it? Probably not. It's just part of your reality now. It's assumed. That's the state you're aiming for with your desire, not the manic energy of I'm getting it. Not the desperate hope of maybe this time, but the settled knowing of course I have this. This is just who I am. Now, how do you get into that state when your current reality seems to scream the opposite? You do it through a very specific practice. You construct a scene in your mind that would only happen if your desire were already fulfilled. Not the moment of getting it, the moment of having it. If your desire is financial freedom, you don't imagine checking your bank account and gasping at the number. That's still the energy of lack, of disbelief. You imagine something mundane that would happen after you've had financial freedom for a while. Maybe you're booking a vacation without looking at prices. Maybe you're having coffee with a friend and casually mentioning an investment you made. Something simple and natural that implies it's already done. If your desire is confidence, you don't imagine people applauding your newfound self-assurance. You imagine yourself in a situation that would normally make you anxious, and you feel bored, relaxed, slightly amused at how easy it is. You imagine the inner experience of someone for whom confidence is default, not something they had to build. The scene you choose matters less than the feeling you cultivate while imagining it. You're not trying to make something happen in the future. You're practicing the state of consciousness you would have if it were already true. You're trying on that identity. And if you do this with enough consistency and sensory vividness that your inner world feels more real than your outer circumstances, something remarkable happens. Your outer circumstances begin to shift, not because you made them shift, but because you became a different person and different people have different realities. Let's pause here for a moment. I want you to do something with me. Wherever you are, whether you're sitting or standing or moving, just bring your attention fully to this moment. Take a slow breath in through your nose, feeling the coolness of the air as it enters. Hold it gently at the top for a count of 3. Now release it slowly through your mouth, letting your shoulders drop as you exhale. Do this 2 more times. Breathe in, noticing how your chest and belly expand. Hold for 3. Breathe out, releasing any tension in your face, your jaw, your neck. 1 more time. Breathe in presence. Breathe out resistance. Good. Now I want you to notice how you feel right now in this moment. Not how you want to feel, not how you think you should feel. Just notice what's actually here. Is there tightness anywhere in your body? Is your mind racing or still? Are you listening to these words with openness or skepticism? Just notice. No judgment, because this moment, right now, this is the only place where you have power. Not in the past, not in the future. Right here, and in this moment, you can choose which state of consciousness you want to occupy. You can choose which version of yourself you want to be. Keep that awareness as we continue. Now, let's talk about the thing that sabotages most people's manifestation efforts, even when they understand the principle of assumption. Attachment. You've probably heard that you need to detach from your desire. Let go, stop caring so much. And this advice is both absolutely correct and dangerously misunderstood, because there's a difference between detachment and indifference. Detachment is when you know your desire is yours. You've assumed the state of the wish fulfilled so completely that you're not anxiously checking for evidence. You're not obsessing over when and how it will show up. You're living from the end, and from that place, you're naturally relaxed. The outcome is certain, so there's nothing to worry about. Indifference, on the other hand, is when you convince yourself you don't actually care about your desire because caring makes you vulnerable. It's a defense mechanism. It's what happens when you've been disappointed so many times that you pretend not to want anything to avoid more pain. Indifference is still rooted in fear. It's just fear wearing the mask of coolness. How do you know which one you're experiencing? Detachment feels light. It feels like trust. When you think about your desire, there's a gentle knowing, a sense of done. You can go about your day fully engaged in the present moment because you're not waiting for your real life to start when the desire arrives. Your real life is already full. Indifference feels heavy. It feels like resignation. When you think about your desire, there's a slight bitterness or a forced casualness. You might catch yourself thinking it would be nice, but I don't really need it, but underneath there's a wound that hasn't healed. There's still a belief that you're protecting yourself from disappointment. True detachment doesn't require you to stop wanting. It requires you to stop wanting from a place of lack. You can deeply desire something and simultaneously know it's already yours in consciousness. Those aren't contradictory states. In fact, that's the ideal state. Passionate knowing, desire without desperation, wanting without lack. Think of it like this. When you order food at a restaurant, you desire that food. You're looking forward to it. You're hungry, but you're not anxiously wondering if it will come. You're not checking the kitchen every 30 seconds. You're not trying to manifest the food's arrival through sheer force of will. You simply know it's coming because you placed the order. You're in a state of assumed fulfillment. You're already relaxed into the knowing that your food is on its way. That's the energy you want with your manifestation. Order placed, outcome certain. Now you can relax and enjoy the conversation at your table until it arrives. The mistake most people make is they place the order, and then they spend the entire meal anxious. Did the waiter hear me? What if they lost my ticket? What if someone else gets served first? Maybe I should go check on it. Should I order something else just in case? That anxiety doesn't make the food come faster. This brings us to one of the most important and most misunderstood aspects of manifestation, the bridge of incidents. When you assume the state of the wish fulfilled, when you occupy that consciousness consistently, a series of events begins to unfold that leads you from where you are to where you've claimed to be. These events often look random. They look like coincidences, chance meetings, unexpected opportunities, lucky breaks. But they're not random. They're the bridge that reality builds to match your assumption. And here's the critical part. You cannot predict what that bridge will look like. You cannot control how your assumption will externalize. You can't map out the steps. The moment you try to dictate the how, you step out of the state of the wish fulfilled and back into the state of trying to make it happen. You become the doer instead of the assumer, and you block the very bridge that was forming. Let me tell you about Jennifer. She wanted to move to a specific city for years. She had good reasons. Better weather, more opportunities in her field, proximity to family. But every time she tried to make it happen, obstacles appeared. She couldn't find a job there. The cost of living was too high. The timing was never right. She spent 3 years trying to force it through logical means, and every door closed. Then she learned about assumption. She stopped trying to figure out how the move would happen, and simply started living in consciousness as though she already lived there. She imagined waking up in that city. She felt the certainty of it. She stopped saying, "I want to live there," and started internally referring to it as home. She didn't apply for a single job there. She didn't even look at apartments. She just assumed the wish fulfilled and went about her life. Within 2 months, her company announced they were opening a new office in that exact city. They asked if anyone wanted to relocate. Not only did Jennifer get to move, but the company covered all her relocation costs and gave her a raise for her willingness to help establish the new office. Do you see what happened? She had spent years trying to build the bridge herself. Applying for jobs was her attempt to create the how. Saving money was her attempt to control the path. And none of it worked because she was operating from, "I don't live there yet, and I need to make it happen." The moment she assumed it was already done, the bridge appeared. And it was a bridge she never could have engineered through her own effort. This is what most people get wrong. They think manifestation is about taking inspired action, following signs, doing the rituals, and then strategizing and hustling their way to the goal. But that's still trying to be the creator of the how. Real manifestation is about assuming the end and then allowing the how to unfold without your interference. Does this mean you take no action? Of course not. You'll be moved to take action, but it will feel natural, obvious, effortless. It won't feel like you're pushing or forcing. It will feel like the next logical step for the person you've assumed yourself to be. When Jennifer's company announced the new office, saying yes wasn't a hard decision. It wasn't her trying to make something happen. It was simply the bridge appearing and she walked across it. If she had still been in the state of trying, she might have hesitated. She might have worried about the logistics or waited for a perfect sign. But because she was already living as someone who lived in that city, saying yes was natural. The bridge of incidents requires trust. It requires you to do your inner work of assuming the wish fulfilled and then release control of how it manifests. This is where most people fall apart. They can't tolerate the uncertainty. They need to know the steps. They need to see the path before they commit to the destination. But life doesn't work that way. You have to commit to the destination first in consciousness, and then the path reveals itself step by step. Think about driving at night. Your headlights only illuminate the road a short distance ahead. You can't see the entire route from start to finish, but you trust that as you move forward, the next section of road will be revealed. Manifestation works the same way. Assume the end. Take the next obvious step. Trust that the road is revealing itself even when you can't see the whole journey. And whatever you do, don't mistake the 3D reality for evidence that your assumption isn't working. The circumstances you see right now are the result of your past states of consciousness. They're outdated information. They're the wake behind the boat, not the direction the boat is heading. If you judge your assumption based on current evidence, you'll abandon it before it has time to harden into fact. You'll be like someone who plants a seed and then digs it up every day to check if it's growing. The seed needs time in the dark, in the unseen, before it breaks through the soil. Your assumption is the same. It's working in the invisible before it becomes visible. So how do you maintain your assumption when everything around you seems to contradict it? How do you stay in the state of the wish fulfilled when your bank account is empty, when you're still single, when your health hasn't improved, when the job offer hasn't come? This is the real test. Anyone can assume when things are going well. The mastery is in assuming despite contrary evidence. And the technique that makes this possible is revision. Revision is one of the most powerful and most underutilized tools in manifestation. Here's how it works. Every day, things happen that seem to confirm your old story. You have an awkward conversation that reinforces your belief that you're socially inept. You get rejected, which reinforces your belief that you're not good enough. You check your bank account and feel that familiar sinking feeling that reinforces your belief that money is hard for you. These moments are dangerous because they re-entrench your old assumptions. They add weight to the identity you're trying to leave behind. But what if you didn't have to accept those moments as fixed reality? What if you could rewrite them? Revision is the practice of mentally replaying an event the way you wish it had happened. Not as fantasy, not as delusion, but as a deliberate act of choosing which version of the event you allow to take root in your consciousness. Let's say you had a meeting at work where you stumbled over your words and felt embarrassed. The old you would replay that moment over and over, cringing, reinforcing the belief that you're not articulate or confident, but instead you revise. You close your eyes and replay the meeting. This time, you see yourself speaking clearly. You see your colleagues nodding and understanding. You feel confident and at ease. You run this revised version through your mind until it feels more real than what actually happened. You're not pretending the original event didn't occur. You're choosing which version of it gets stored in your consciousness as truth. Because here's what most people don't understand. Memory is not fixed. Every time you recall something, you're actually reconstructing it. You're not pulling up a video file. You're reassembling pieces based on your current state of consciousness. That's why two people can remember the same event completely differently. That's why your memories shift over time. Your consciousness is always interpreting, always creating meaning. So if memory is already fluid, already subject to your interpretive lens, why not deliberately shape it in a way that serves you? Why let random, ego-driven interpretations solidify into limiting beliefs when you could consciously revise them into empowering ones? I know what you might be thinking. Isn't this just gaslighting myself? Isn't this denying reality? No, because you're not revising to avoid responsibility or to pretend you're perfect. You're revising to remove the power that past events have to define your future. You're revising to align your memory with the assumption you're now choosing. Think of it this way. That embarrassing meeting happened to the old version of you. The version who believed they weren't confident. But you're now assuming a new identity. You're claiming to be someone who is articulate and self-assured. So which memory serves that new assumption? The one where you stumbled, or the one where you spoke with clarity? You get to choose. And the more you choose the revised version, the more your consciousness accepts that as your reality. This doesn't mean you ignore feedback or refuse to learn from mistakes. If you genuinely communicated poorly, you can acknowledge that and commit to improving without replaying the shame loop. Revision isn't about denying facts. It's about refusing to let those facts define you. One of my favorite examples of revision comes from a woman named Teresa. She grew up in a household where money was a constant source of stress. Her parents fought about it. There was never enough. She absorbed the belief that financial struggle was just how life was. As an adult, even when she made decent money, it slipped through her fingers. There were always unexpected expenses, always emergencies, always a reason she couldn't get ahead. She knew her childhood experiences had shaped her relationship with money, but knowing that intellectually didn't change anything. Then she started practicing revision. Every night before bed, she would mentally go back to specific moments from her childhood. The moment her mother cried over bills. The moment her father snapped at her for asking for something at the store. The moment she felt shame about wearing hand-me-downs to school. And she would revise each one. In the revision, her mother was calm, paying bills with ease. Her father smiled and said, "Of course we can get that for you." She felt proud of her unique style. Now let's talk about something that might seem counterintuitive, the power of rest. In a culture that glorifies hustle and constant action, this idea feels almost heretical. But the most important thing you can do after assuming your wish fulfilled is to rest in that assumption, not to keep working on it, not to do more techniques, not to obsess or check or monitor. Rest. There's a principle that makes this clear. After you've done your inner work of occupying the state of the wish fulfilled, your only job is to cease from labor, to be still, to let it be done. This is sometimes called the Sabbath principle. On the seventh day, creation rests, not because the work is incomplete, but because it's complete. Continuing to labor would be a denial of that completion. When you assume your wish fulfilled, you've planted the seed. The seed doesn't need you to keep digging it up, checking it, watering it obsessively. It needs darkness, stillness, time. Your assumption is the same. It needs you to stop interfering with it. Every time you go back into your mind to check if it's working, to look for evidence, to worry that maybe you didn't do it right, you're pulling up the seed. You're denying the completion of the inner work you already did. This is one of the hardest things for people to grasp, because we're conditioned to believe that more effort equals better results. But in the realm of consciousness, the opposite is often true. Effortless assumption is more powerful than effortful wishing. Resting in the knowing is more creative than straining in the hoping. Think about a time when you stopped trying to remember something, and then it popped into your head the moment you relaxed, or a time when you struggled with a problem for hours, gave up, and then the solution came to you in the shower. That's not coincidence. That's the power of release, of rest. When you let go of the mental effort, the striving, the trying, you create space for the answer to arise. Manifestation works the same way. The harder you try to make it happen, the more you reinforce the state of it not being here yet. But when you assume it's done and then rest, really rest, not just physically but mentally and emotionally, you allow the assumption to harden into fact without your interference. So what does rest look like in practice? It means once you've done your imaginal scene, once you've felt the reality of your wish fulfilled, you release it. You say to yourself, it is done. And then you go live your life. You engage fully with the present moment. You find things to enjoy right now, not as a strategy to attract more good things, but because life is happening now, and it deserves your presence. If thoughts about your desire come up, you don't push them away. You also don't indulge in fantasizing or worrying. You simply acknowledge, yes, that's done, and return to whatever you're doing. This kind of rest requires trust. It requires faith not in some external deity, but in the creative power of your own consciousness. Faith that the assumption you planted is working beneath the surface, even when you can't see evidence yet. Faith that the bridge of incidents is forming even when you can't perceive the steps. Faith that you are the operant power in your reality, and what you claim in consciousness must externalize in time. Let's take a moment here to ground into that trust. I want you to close your eyes if you can do so safely, or just soften your gaze. Bring your attention to your breath again, not to change it, just to notice it. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Now bring to mind something you currently have that you once desired. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's a skill. Maybe it's a quality about yourself. Remember back to when you didn't have it yet. Remember wanting it. And now notice that you have it. It became yours. The desire moved from your inner world to your outer world. You've already proven that you can assume and receive. This isn't new territory. You've done it countless times in your life without even knowing you were doing it. So take a breath and let yourself trust. Trust that the same power that brought everything you currently have into your reality is at work right now on the desires you're holding. You don't need to know how. You don't need to force. You just need to rest in the knowing that it's already done in consciousness, and the 3D will catch up. Open your eyes when you're ready. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Doubt. No matter how well you understand these principles, doubt will come. It's part of being human. You'll have moments where you think, this isn't working. I've been assuming for weeks and nothing's changed. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this doesn't work for me. Maybe I'm not powerful enough, spiritual enough, believing enough. These doubts are not evidence that manifestation isn't real. They're evidence that you're human, and your logical mind is looking at the lag between your assumption and its manifestation in the 3D. Here's what you need to understand about doubt. It's not the problem. The problem is how you respond to doubt. Most people let doubt derail them completely. The moment doubt arises, they abandon their assumption. They go back to their old state. They decide the whole thing was nonsense. But doubt is just a thought. It's a visitor. It doesn't have to be welcomed in and given the master bedroom. When doubt arises, you have a choice. You can treat it as truth, as evidence that your assumption is wrong, or you can recognize it as the old state trying to reassert itself, as the ego's fear of change, as the logical mind doing its job of pattern matching based on past data. The practice is this. When doubt comes, don't fight it. Don't shame yourself for having it. Just notice it. Oh, there's doubt. Hello, doubt. I see you. And then gently, firmly return to your assumption. It's like training a puppy. The puppy wanders off. You don't yell at the puppy or decide the puppy is untrainable. You just guide it back, again and again, with patience, with consistency. Eventually the puppy learns. Eventually your consciousness learns. The assumption becomes more familiar than the doubt. The new state becomes your default. One technique that helps immensely is having a return phrase. A simple statement you say to yourself when doubt arises. Something like, that's just the old story, my assumption is law. Or I've already done the work, now I rest. Or simply it is done. The words themselves aren't magic, but they serve as a pattern interrupt. They remind you that you have a choice in this moment. You can feed the doubt or feed the assumption. Whatever you feed grows. So when contradictory evidence appears in your life, and it will, treat it as the old reality playing itself out. It's the wake behind the boat. It's outdated information. Your new assumption is already creating a new reality, but there's a lag time. The physical world is slower to shift than the inner world. That's okay. That's normal. Don't let current circumstances bully you out of your assumption. Stand firm. I am who I say I am. I have what I claim to have in consciousness. The 3D is catching up. Just watch. Here's a question for you to sit with. What would change in your life right now if you truly believed that your assumptions create your reality? Not intellectually believed it, but knew it in your bones the way you know fire is hot. Would you still tolerate thoughts of limitation? Would you still replay stories of victimhood? Would you still give other people and circumstances the power to determine what's possible for you? Or would you start being ruthlessly selective about which thoughts you entertain, which states you occupy, which version of yourself you claim? This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about recognizing that you are the artist, and your life is the canvas, and your assumptions are the brush strokes. You can keep painting the same old picture, or you can start painting something new. But first, you have to take responsibility for the brush in your hand. Now let's talk about something that often confuses people. Can you assume for others? Can you hold an assumption about someone else's life, their healing, their success, their happiness? The answer is yes, but with important caveats. You can absolutely hold an assumption about another person, and it will affect your experience of them. If you assume someone is generous, you'll start noticing their generous acts. If you assume someone is trustworthy, you'll experience them as reliable. If you assume someone loves you, you'll interpret their actions through that lens. But here's where it gets tricky. You're not controlling them. You're not overriding their free will. What you're doing is shifting into a reality where that version of them is true. Think of it like changing the channel. You're not changing what's on other channels. You're simply selecting which broadcast you tune into. There's a version of reality where that person is difficult and untrustworthy. There's another version where they're supportive and kind. Your assumption determines which version you experience. This has profound implications for relationships. So many people exhaust themselves trying to change other people, trying to convince them to be different, trying to communicate better or set boundaries or make them understand. And sometimes those things are important. But what if you started by changing your assumption about them? What if instead of seeing them as someone who always lets you down, you assumed they were reliable? What if instead of bracing for criticism, you assumed they were supportive? You might be surprised how quickly they start showing up differently. Not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped being energetically available for the old version of them. There's a story about a woman whose teenage son was struggling. He was angry, defiant, failing in school, pulling away from the family. She tried everything: therapy, tough love, heart-to-heart conversations, consequences, rewards. Nothing worked. If anything, he got worse. Then she learned about assumption. She stopped trying to fix him and started assuming he was already the young man she knew he could be. Every night she imagined him happy, responsible, connected to the family. She revised past arguments. She stopped talking about his problems to friends. She stopped seeing him through the lens of worry. Within 2 months, he started turning around. He didn't know she was doing anything. She hadn't changed her parenting approach, but he felt the shift in her energy. He was no longer meeting her expectation of struggle. He was meeting her assumption of his inherent goodness and capability. Does this mean you can manifest for someone else against their will? Can you assume your ex wants you back and force them to return? Can you assume someone gets a job they don't want and make it happen? This is where ethics come in. You can hold an assumption, but the person still has their own consciousness, their own assumptions, their own path. If your assumption aligns with their highest good and their own inner knowing, it can absolutely help facilitate that reality. But if it contradicts their deep-seated assumptions about themselves or what they want, you'll hit resistance. You might experience a version of them that seems interested or available, but it won't be stable. It won't feel authentic. The more loving approach is to assume the best for them without attachment to a specific form. Assume they're happy. Assume they're thriving. Assume they're exactly where they need to be, and then let the specifics unfold however they will. If you're meant to be part of their journey, your assumption will help create that. If you're not, your assumption still blesses them. It's a win either way. There's another layer to this that's crucial. You can't really separate your assumption about others from your assumption about yourself. If you assume someone doesn't respect you, what are you really assuming? That you're not worthy of respect. If you assume people are always trying to take advantage of you, what's the deeper assumption? That you're a victim, that you're powerless, that the world is unsafe. So when you work on changing your assumption about others, you're actually working on your assumption about yourself. And that's where the real power is. Because when you assume you are respected, you are loved, you are valued, you are safe, people have no choice but to mirror that back to you. Not because you're controlling them, but because you've claimed a reality where that's true. And reality must conform to your dominant assumption. So start there, before you try to assume anything about anyone else. Get clear on who you're assuming yourself to be, because that's the foundation everything else is built on. Let's do an exercise right now. I want you to think about one relationship in your life that feels difficult or disappointing. Maybe it's a family member, a coworker, a friend, a romantic partner. Got someone in mind? Good. Now I want you to identify the assumption you've been holding about this person. What's the story you tell about them? They're critical. They're unavailable. They don't appreciate me. They're difficult to deal with. Whatever it is, just notice it without judgment. That's been your assumption. Now I want you to choose a new assumption. Not wishful thinking, an actual shift in how you perceive them. What if they were supportive? What if they were kind? What if they saw your value? What if interactions with them were easy and pleasant? Choose one new assumption about them. Now feel it. What would it feel like to be in a relationship with that version of them? How would you show up differently? How would your body language change? How would your tone of voice shift? Feel the relief of not having to brace yourself around them. Feel the warmth of genuine connection. Spend a few moments in that feeling. Let it become real in your inner world. You've just planted a new assumption. Over the next week, every time you think about this person or interact with them, return to this assumption. Don't look for evidence that they've changed yet. Just keep assuming the new version. And watch what happens. Let's shift now to something equally important. The unconscious assumptions that are running your life without your awareness. You have thousands of beliefs operating below the surface of your conscious mind. Beliefs about money, relationships, health, success, what you deserve, what's possible for you, how hard life has to be. Most of these beliefs you didn't choose. They're the result of childhood conditioning, cultural programming, past experiences that you interpreted in a certain way, and then generalized into a rule about reality. And these unconscious assumptions are creating your reality every single day. This is why you can consciously want one thing and keep experiencing the opposite. Your conscious desire is one thing, but if your unconscious assumption contradicts it, the unconscious wins every time. It's like trying to drive with the parking brake on. You can press the gas all you want, but you're not going anywhere until you release the brake. So how do you identify these hidden assumptions? You look at your recurring patterns, the things that keep happening to you no matter how hard you try to change them. If you keep attracting partners who are emotionally unavailable, there's an assumption there. Maybe it's I'm not worthy of real love, or relationships aren't safe, or people always leave. If money keeps slipping through your fingers no matter how much you make, there's an assumption. Maybe it's I'm bad with money, or wealth isn't spiritual, or there's never enough. If opportunities keep passing you by, there's an assumption. Maybe it's good things don't happen to me, or I'm always overlooked, or I have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Your results are showing you your assumptions, not the assumptions you claim to have, not the affirmations you say, the real operating assumptions that are running in the background. And the beautiful thing is, once you identify them, you can change them. The process is simple but not always easy. First, identify the pattern. What keeps happening that you don't want? Second, identify the assumption underneath it. What would you have to believe about yourself or life for this pattern to make sense? Third, choose a new assumption. What's the opposite? What would someone with a different experience believe? Fourth, practice the new assumption consistently until it becomes your default. Saturate your mind with it. Revise past experiences that reinforce the old assumption. Imagine future experiences that confirm the new one. Live from it. Decide from it. Speak from it. Act from it. It won't feel natural at first. It might feel like you're lying to yourself. That's okay. You're not lying. You're just choosing which truth you want to be true for you. Because here's the secret. All assumptions are just that, assumptions. None of them are objectively true. The person who assumes life is hard has plenty of evidence to support that. The person who assumes life is easy also has evidence to support their belief. They're living in different realities, created by different assumptions. You get to choose which reality you want to inhabit. Let me give you a practical example. There was a man named David who realized he had an unconscious assumption that he wasn't smart. It had started in childhood. He'd been compared to his older brother who got straight A's. He struggled with traditional academics. He internalized the message that he was the dumb one. As an adult, this assumption played out everywhere. He avoided speaking up in meetings because he assumed he'd say something stupid. He didn't apply for promotions because he assumed he wasn't qualified. He dismissed his own ideas before giving them a chance. Once he identified this assumption, he could see how it had shaped his entire life. So he chose a new one. I am intelligent and my perspective is valuable. At first it felt absurd. Every cell in his body wanted to reject it, but he persisted. He started revising childhood memories. He reimagined his teachers praising his unique way of thinking. He imagined his parents telling him he was brilliant. He practiced speaking up in meetings and then revising any moment where he stumbled. He assumed his ideas mattered, and slowly, reality shifted. People started seeking out his opinion. His boss noticed his contributions and offered him a leadership role. He started trusting his own thinking. It wasn't that he suddenly became smarter. It was that he stopped operating from the assumption that he wasn't. What assumptions are you carrying that are limiting your reality? Take some time later today to journal about this. Write down the areas of life where you feel stuck. Then ask yourself, what would I have to believe for this to be my experience? Be honest. Be willing to see the beliefs you've been defending or hiding from. Because you can't change what you won't acknowledge. Once you see the assumption clearly, you can start the work of replacing it. And I promise you this work is worth it. One shifted assumption can change your entire life trajectory. It can open doors you didn't even know existed. It can make effortless what used to be a struggle. This is the real work of manifestation, not the techniques, not the rituals, the identity level shifts, the assumption archaeology. Now let's talk about one of the most practical and immediate ways to practice assumption-based living. I call it living from versus living for. Most people live for their desires. They're waiting for the thing to happen so they can finally be happy, finally feel secure, finally relax. They're in a constant state of becoming, always reaching for the next milestone that will complete them. But the person who manifests effortlessly lives from their desire. They embody the identity of someone who already has it. They make decisions from that place. They show up from that energy. They speak from that knowing. Let's say your desire is financial abundance. Living for it looks like working extra hours to try to earn more, obsessively budgeting and restricting, feeling stressed every time you spend money, constantly thinking about money because you're afraid there's not enough, making decisions from scarcity. Living from it looks like trusting there's always enough, spending consciously but without anxiety, seeing opportunities instead of obstacles, making generous choices because that's who you are, barely thinking about money because it's handled. See the difference? One is trying to get to abundance. The other is assuming abundance is already your reality. And the second state actually creates abundance because you're being the person who has it. Your energy is different. Your decisions are different. The opportunities you notice are different. People respond to you differently. You're not broadcasting need. You're broadcasting sufficiency, and reality mirrors that back. Or let's say your desire is a loving relationship. Living for it looks like obsessively dating, analyzing every interaction for signs of potential, feeling desperate or disappointed after bad dates, changing yourself to be more appealing, feeling incomplete without a partner. Living from it looks like living a full life now, being open to connection without needing it to complete you, treating yourself with the love you want to receive, being genuinely interested in people without agenda, radiating contentment. Again, which person is more attractive? Which person is more likely to call in a healthy relationship? The one desperately seeking or the one already whole? This is what it means to assume the wish fulfilled. You stop living for the thing and start living from the thing. You ask yourself, how would I move through my day if I already had this? What decisions would I make? How would I carry myself? What would I say yes to? What would I say no to? And then you do that, not as a strategy to get the thing, but as an identity shift. You become the person who has it, and having it becomes inevitable. I had a client once who wanted to be a successful author. She'd been writing for years, but never finishing anything. She was living for the goal. I'll be successful when I'm published. I'll be a real author when people read my work. So she was stuck in this loop of never being enough, never being ready, always waiting for external validation. I asked her, how does a successful author live? She thought about it. A successful author writes consistently, takes their work seriously, invests in their craft, doesn't wait for permission, sees themselves as a professional. So I told her, start living that way now, not when you're published. Now, she started writing every day. She hired an editor. She treated her writing time as sacred, non-negotiable. She introduced herself as an author, no qualifiers. Within 6 months, she'd finished her book. Within a year, she had a publishing deal. Not because she manifested it through techniques, but because she assumed the identity, and everything else followed. What identity are you waiting to claim until your circumstances change? What if you claimed it now? What if you decided that the external validation, the money, the relationship, the success, those are just bonuses that confirm what you've already decided is true in consciousness? You are already that person. The 3D just hasn't caught up yet. So live from it. Decide from it. Be it now. Here's something to reflect on. If you woke up tomorrow and your desire had manifested overnight, what's the first thing you would do differently? How would you feel walking through your day? What weight would be lifted? What energy would you have? Now, what's stopping you from feeling that way today? The only difference between you now and you with your desire fulfilled is a story you're telling yourself about what you need in order to be that person. But you don't need anything. You can choose that state right now. You can assume it's already true. And when you do, when you really embody it, the external world will have no choice but to reflect it. Let's move into a visualization now. I want you to get comfortable wherever you are. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take 3 deep breaths. With each exhale, let your body become heavier, more relaxed. Now I want you to imagine yourself 1 year from now. Your desire has manifested. It's been yours for months now. It's not exciting anymore. It's just normal. Your reality. See yourself in a specific scene. Maybe you're having coffee in the morning. Maybe you're getting ready for your day. Maybe you're talking to someone you care about. But in this scene, the thing you want now is so integrated into your life that you barely notice it anymore. It's just who you are. What are you wearing? What does the space around you look like? Notice the details, the colors, the sounds, the textures. Now notice how you feel in your body. There's no striving, no anxiety about the future, no waiting for your real life to begin. This is your real life. And it's good. It's full. Feel the settledness in your chest, the quiet contentment. This is the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not the excitement of getting it, the peace of having it. Breathe into that feeling. Let it fill you. This is your natural state. This is who you are now. When you're ready, bring that feeling back with you. Open your eyes and know that what you just experienced is already real in consciousness. The 3D is just catching up. As we move toward the end of our time together, I want to talk about what happens when assumption becomes your default operating system. When you've practiced these principles so consistently that you no longer think about manifestation as something you do, it's just how you live. You automatically assume the best. You naturally occupy states of fulfillment. You effortlessly return to your center when something tries to knock you off. This is the goal. Not to become a manifestation expert who's constantly doing techniques, but to become someone who lives from such a deep knowing of their own creative power that life starts to feel magical. Not because you're making magic happen, but because you've stopped blocking the natural flow of good that wants to move through you. When you get to this place, and you will if you commit to this work, several things happen. First, you stop seeing obstacles as problems. You see them as the bridge rearranging itself. You trust that even the detours are leading you where you've claimed to go. Second, you stop needing to control outcomes. You can hold preferences without attachment. You can desire things without desperation. You know that whatever happens, you have the power to assume a new reality if needed. Third, you become magnetic in a way that has nothing to do with trying. People are drawn to you because you're not looking for anything from them. You're already full. You radiate a kind of certainty and peace that others want to be around. Fourth, coincidences become your new normal. The right people show up at the right time. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. Things click into place with ease. Not because you're lucky, but because you're aligned. Fifth, you stop living in the future. You're fully present because you're not waiting for your life to start when you get the thing. Your life is rich now, and the desires you have are just extensions of that richness, not requirements for it. This is the effortless life, and it's available to you. Not someday. Not when you've mastered all the techniques. Now, the moment you decide that your assumptions create your reality and you start choosing them consciously, everything changes. Your entire experience of being alive transforms. Because you're no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You're the one determining what those circumstances will be through the states you occupy. So let me ask you directly. Are you ready to take responsibility for the creative power of your consciousness? Are you ready to stop blaming external factors for your reality and start owning that your assumptions have been creating it all along? Are you ready to release the victim story, the bad luck narrative, the limiting beliefs that have kept you small? Because this work requires something from you. It requires you to grow up spiritually, to stop waiting for someone or something to save you and recognize that you've had the power all along. It requires you to be ruthlessly honest about the states you've been occupying. Let's bring this full circle back to Sarah sitting in her car before that interview. She didn't know about all these principles. She just knew that something shifted when she stopped trying and started assuming. She walked into that interview as someone who already had the job, and the job became hers. That's the shortcut, not the hustle. Not the perfect resume, not the endless preparation, the assumption, the inner knowing that it's already done. You can apply this to anything, the relationship you want. Stop trying to attract it and assume you're already the kind of person who has that kind of love in their life. The money you want, stop chasing it and assume abundance is your natural state. The confidence you want, stop trying to build it and assume you're already confident. Just assume it's true. The health you want, assume your body knows how to heal and is doing so. The opportunities you want, assume you're someone who opportunities find. Feel it, embody it, live from it, and watch your reality reorganize itself to match. Before we close, I want to give you a practice to integrate everything we've covered. Tonight, before you fall asleep, do this. Think about your primary desire right now, the thing you want most. Now construct a simple scene that implies it's already fulfilled. Not the moment of getting it, a moment of having it. Keep it simple. Maybe it's 5 seconds long. Just one clear image with a feeling attached. Maybe it's someone congratulating you. Maybe it's you looking at something that proves it's done. Maybe it's a feeling of relief and satisfaction in your body. Whatever scene you choose, replay it in your mind as you're falling asleep. Feel it as real. Let yourself drift off while occupying that state of the wish fulfilled. Do this every night for at least a week. Don't check for results during the day. Don't obsess or monitor. Just do your nightly practice and then go about your life as the person who already has what you want. Make decisions from that identity. Speak from that knowing, and trust that the bridge of incidents is forming. Trust that your assumption is hardening into fact. Trust that you are the creative power in your reality, and what you claim in consciousness must manifest in time. Now let's get deeply practical, because understanding the principles is only the beginning. The real transformation happens in the application, and this is where most people stumble. They hear these ideas, they feel inspired, they try it for a few days, and then life happens. Old patterns resurface. Doubt creeps back in. The 3D circumstances feel too loud, too real, too unchangeable, so they abandon the practice and return to their default state. I don't want that for you, so we're going to build a relapse-proofing system. A way to catch yourself when you slip back into old assumptions and guide yourself back to the new ones. Think of this as your emergency toolkit for when the work feels hard. The first thing you need to understand is that relapse is not failure. It's part of the process. You've been operating from certain assumptions for years, maybe decades. Those neural pathways are deep. Those emotional patterns are familiar. Your ego feels safe in them, even if they're limiting. So when you start assuming something new, your system will resist. It will try to pull you back to what's known. The key is not to avoid relapse, but to shorten the time between when you slip and when you catch yourself. In the beginning, you might spend days or weeks in the old state before you realize you've abandoned your new assumption. That's okay. With practice, you'll catch it within hours, then within minutes. Eventually, you'll catch the thought before it even fully forms. You'll feel yourself starting to slip and immediately course correct. That's mastery. Not never falling, but falling and getting back up so quickly that the fall barely registers. So here's your relapse-proofing protocol. First, create awareness triggers. These are specific moments throughout your day where you pause and check in with your state. For example, every time you touch a doorknob, every time you wash your hands, every time you hear a notification on your phone. In that micro moment, you ask yourself, what state am I in right now? Am I in the wish fulfilled, or am I in the old story? If you're in the old story, no judgment. Just notice. Then choose to shift. Take one breath as the person who already has your desire. Feel it for just 3 seconds. That's it. These micro shifts throughout the day are more powerful than one long visualization session because they train your consciousness to default to the new assumption. You're building a new baseline. Second, create a state shifter list. This is a personal menu of things that help you return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled when you've lost it. Maybe it's a specific song that makes you feel abundant. Maybe it's a memory of a time you felt confident. Maybe it's a phrase you repeat. Maybe it's a physical gesture like placing your hand on your heart and taking a deep breath. Everyone's list will be different. The point is to have tools ready so that when you notice you're in the wrong state, you don't have to figure out what to do. You just pull from your list. I had a client who kept a note on her phone with 5 different state shifters. One was imagining her grandmother hugging her because that always made her feel loved and safe. One was remembering the day she nailed a presentation because it reminded her she was capable. One was a specific visualization of her future self winking at her current self as if to say, I've got you. This is already done. She said that on hard days she'd cycle through her list multiple times, but it always worked. It always brought her back. Third, practice the evening inventory. Every night before bed, review your day, not to judge yourself, but to learn. When did I slip into the old assumption today? What triggered it? How long did I stay there? What brought me back? This isn't about perfectionism. It's about pattern recognition. Over time, you'll start to see your triggers clearly. Maybe you always slip when you check your bank account. Maybe it's when you scroll social media and compare yourself to others. Maybe it's when a certain person says something. Once you know your triggers, you can prepare for them. You can create a plan. Next time I check my bank account, I'll immediately do my state shifter before the old assumption can take root. Next time I scroll social media, I'll only do it when I'm already in a good state, and I'll set a timer for 5 minutes. You're not avoiding triggers. You're just making sure they don't have the power to derail you. Fourth, and this is crucial, create an evidence journal. This is not a gratitude journal, though that's lovely too. This is a journal where you track evidence of your new assumption manifesting. It can be tiny things. It can be subtle shifts. Maybe you assumed you were abundant, and then someone bought you coffee unexpectedly. That's evidence. Maybe you assumed you were confident, and you spoke up in a meeting without overthinking it. That's evidence. Maybe you assumed you were loved, and a friend sent you a thoughtful text out of nowhere. Evidence. Write it down. Because when doubt comes, and it will, you need proof that this is working. Not proof for anyone else. Proof for you. Your logical mind wants data. Give it data. Show it that your new assumption is already creating shifts. This trains your brain to start looking for evidence instead of looking for problems. You'll start to notice synchronicities, coincidences, lucky breaks. And each time you acknowledge them and write them down, You reinforce the new assumption. You're telling your subconscious, see, this is real. This is working. Keep going. Let me tell you about a man named Richard who used this evidence journal to transform his business. He'd been struggling for 2 years, barely making ends meet, constantly stressed, wondering if he should just quit and get a regular job. He started practicing assumption. He claimed that his business was thriving, that clients came to him easily, that money flowed. But the first few weeks, nothing changed. His bank account still looked grim. No new clients appeared. He was ready to give up. Then I told him to start the evidence journal. He thought it was stupid because there was no evidence. But I pushed him to look harder. Find anything, no matter how small. So he started writing. Day 1, I felt calm about money for 10 minutes this morning. That's different. Day 3, someone mentioned my business to a friend without me asking. Day 5, an old client reached out just to check in. Day 7, I had an idea for a new service offering and it felt exciting instead of desperate. None of these things were the big manifestation he wanted, but they were shifts, subtle changes in his energy, in how people responded to him, in his own inner state. He kept tracking, and by week 3 he got a new client, then another, then a referral. Within 3 months his business had doubled. But the transformation didn't happen when the clients showed up. It happened when he started noticing the small evidence that his assumption was working. That gave him faith to keep going. Now let's talk about the micro challenges. These are small daily practices that build your assumption muscle. Think of them like going to the gym. You don't walk in and immediately deadlift 300 pounds. You start with light weights and build strength over time. Same with assumption. We're going to give you 30 days of progressive challenges that train your consciousness to operate from the wish fulfilled instead of from lack. These aren't big dramatic things. They're small, doable shifts that compound over time. And by the end of 30 days, you'll be a different person. Not because you tried to be, but because you practiced being that. Day 14. Halfway point. Today is a rest day. No new practice. Just a check-in. How different do you feel compared to 2 weeks ago? What shifts have you noticed? Write them in your evidence journal. Celebrate your progress. Then rest in the knowing that the work is done. You've been planting seeds for 2 weeks. Trust them to grow. Day 15. Today you're going to do something that the version of you with your desire fulfilled would do. Not something big or expensive. Something small. Maybe that version of you takes a 20-minute walk in nature because they have time and space in their life. Maybe they buy fresh flowers for their home because they appreciate beauty. Maybe they say no to something they don't want to do because they value their energy. Choose one thing and do it today, not to get your desire, but because you are already the person who has it. Day 16. Do another action from that future identity. Day 17. Another. By now you're starting to notice that being that person feels more natural. Your body is learning the energy. Your mind is accepting the identity. Day 18. Today you're going to practice the Sabbath. You've been doing work for over 2 weeks. Today you rest. You stop trying. You stop checking. You stop worrying. You simply trust. When thoughts about your desire come up, you gently say it is done and return to the present moment. Practice the art of letting it be finished. Day 19. Today you're going to sit with doubt without fixing it. This sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me. When doubt arises, don't immediately shift it or positive think it away. Just observe it. Hello, doubt. I see you. You're scared. You're trying to protect me. Thank you, but I've got this. Sometimes acknowledging the doubt disempowers it more than fighting it. Try it today, day 20. Today you're going to assume something that feels just slightly out of reach, not your big desire. Something smaller that would be nice but that you don't believe is possible yet. Maybe it's getting a good parking spot. Maybe it's hearing from a specific person. Maybe it's finding money on the ground. Assume it's yours. Feel it done. See what happens. This builds your faith because when small things manifest quickly, you start to trust the process. Day 21. 3 weeks in. Today, you're going to teach someone else about assumption, not in a preachy way. Just share one insight you've learned with someone you care about. Teaching solidifies your own understanding. And who knows, you might plant a seed in them too. Day 22. Today, you're going to practice instant state shifting. Set a timer to go off every hour. When it goes off, no matter what you're doing, take 10 seconds to drop into the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Eyes closed, deep breath, feel it done. 8 times today, you'll reinforce the new state. Day 23. Today, you're going to fast from complaining. Not one complaint out loud or in your head. When you catch yourself about to complain, flip it. Find the assumption underneath the complaint and choose a new one. This is harder than it sounds, but it reveals how much of your inner dialogue is reinforcing lack. Day 24. Today you're going to assume everyone you meet is a friend, even strangers, even difficult people. Hold that assumption and watch how your interactions change. People feel your energy. When you assume they're friendly, they become friendly. It's wild. Try it. Day 25. Today you're going to write a letter from your future self. The version of you who has your desire and has had it for a year. They're writing back to current you. What do they want you to know? What do they thank you for? What do they tell you to stop worrying about? Let your future self guide your present self. Day 26. Today you're going to create a symbol for your wish fulfilled. Maybe it's an object you carry in your pocket. Maybe it's a word you say to yourself. Maybe it's a gesture, something that instantly connects you to the feeling. Use it throughout the day whenever you need to return to your assumption. Day 27. Today you're going to do a full revision of your entire past week. Sit down with your journal and go day by day. Anything that contradicted your new assumption, rewrite it. This is deep work. Take your time. Let the new version become the story you tell yourself. Day 28. Today you're going to assume for the collective. Hold an assumption of peace, healing, abundance for the world. Notice how it makes you feel to be in that state. Notice how it shifts your own energy. You're not just manifesting for yourself. You're contributing to the field. Day 29. Today is preparation for completion. You're going to write down everything you've learned in these 30 days. What changed? What clicked? What do you want to remember going forward? Create your own manifesto of assumption-based living. Day 30. Completion. Today you celebrate. You've done 30 days of conscious assumption work. You are not the same person you were a month ago. Whether you see dramatic external changes yet or not, the internal shift has happened. And that's what matters. That's where all manifestation begins. Today, do your wish-fulfilled scene one more time with the full knowing that it's already done. Then release it, trust it, live your life as the person who has it. The work is complete, but what happens after day 30? How do you maintain this without it becoming another thing you have to do? Another self-improvement project that eventually falls away. This is where integration happens. You take the practices that worked best for you, and you weave them into your life so seamlessly that they're no longer practices. They're just how you are. For some people, that means a 5-minute morning visualization. For others, it's the micro moments of state checking throughout the day. For others, it's the nightly revision. There's no right way. The only rule is consistency. You need some kind of daily touch point with the state of the wish fulfilled, even if it's just 30 seconds. Because if you go days without deliberately occupying that state, the old default starts to creep back in. Not because you're weak, but because habits are powerful and your old assumptions have momentum. Let me share a story about a woman named Lisa who did this work and then stopped. She'd been practicing assumption for 3 months. Her life had transformed. She'd manifested a promotion, a new relationship, a move to a city she'd been dreaming about. Everything was clicking. So she thought, okay, I've got this now. I don't need to do the practices anymore. It's working. Big mistake. Within a month, she noticed her old anxiety returning. Her new relationship started feeling shaky. Work stress increased. She couldn't figure out what went wrong. I'm still assuming, she told me. I still believe in this. But when I asked her when she last did a deliberate practice, she couldn't remember. She'd stopped tending the garden, and weeds were starting to grow. So she went back to her nightly visualization. Within a week, she felt the shift back. Everything stabilized. She realized that assumption isn't a one-time thing. It's a way of life. And like brushing your teeth or exercising, it requires maintenance. So create a sustainable practice. Don't make it complicated. Don't make it another item on your to-do list that creates guilt when you miss it. Make it something you genuinely look forward to. Something that feels good. Maybe it's visualizing while you drink your morning coffee. Maybe it's revising while you're in the shower. Maybe it's doing a state check while you're in line at the grocery store. Find the moments where it fits naturally into your life, and protect those moments. Because this is the work that creates your reality. This is more important than most of the things you fill your day with. Act like it. Now let's address some common scenarios where people struggle to maintain their assumption. The first one is when someone close to you contradicts your new belief. You're assuming you're confident, and your mother makes a comment about how you've always been shy. You're assuming abundance, and your partner complains about money. You're assuming your health is improving, and your doctor gives you concerning news. These moments can shake you. Because the people closest to us have power. Their words land differently than a stranger's. But here's what you need to remember. They're responding to who you were. They're seeing the old you. They don't know you've claimed a new identity. And even if you told them, they might not believe it until they see evidence. That's okay. You don't need their belief. You need your own. When someone contradicts your assumption, bless them silently. Thank them for showing you where you still need to firm up your own belief. Then return to your knowing. Don't argue. Don't try to convince them. Just hold your assumption quietly and let your results speak for themselves. Here's a practice for this. When someone says something that contradicts your new assumption, immediately do a mental revision. Right there in the moment, replay what they just said, but in the revision, they're supporting your new belief instead. If your mother said you've always been shy, revise it so she says you've always been so self-assured. Feel the difference. Let the revised version take root. Then respond to the actual conversation however feels natural, but internally you're operating from the revised reality. Over time, as your assumption solidifies, people will start mirroring it back to you without you saying a word. They'll stop seeing you as the old version. They'll respond to the new you. It's one of the most remarkable parts of this work. You change, and your entire world changes with you. Another common scenario is when you're surrounded by people operating from lack. I'll tell you about Michael, who experienced this dramatically. He'd been unemployed for 4 months when he learned about assumption. He started practicing. He assumed he was someone who had meaningful work, who was valued, who was making great money. He did his visualizations. He held the state. And then in week 2, his car broke down. It needed expensive repairs he couldn't afford. He was devastated. He thought, see, I knew this manifestation stuff was garbage. It's making things worse. But something in him decided to keep going. He assumed that even this was somehow part of the bridge. He revised the situation. He imagined having the money easily. He stayed in the state of the wish fulfilled. 3 days later, an old friend called out of the blue. They needed someone with Michael's exact skill set for a project. Emergency hire. Double his usual rate. He earned enough in 2 weeks to fix his car and cover his bills. And the project led to a full-time position at a company he'd dreamed of working for. The breakdown wasn't random. It was the bridge. But if he'd let it shake his assumption, he would have missed the entire unfolding. So when things get rocky, when the 3D shows you something you don't want to see, take a deep breath. Acknowledge what's happening without giving it power. Say out loud if you need to, this is just the old story. My new story is already forming. Then return to your assumption immediately. Don't wait. Don't wallow. Don't spiral. Return. The faster you can get back to the wish-fulfilled state, the faster the old pattern dissolves. Now let's go deep on a practice that can accelerate everything. I call it assumption saturation. This is when you deliberately immerse yourself in the feeling of your wish fulfilled so completely that your old state has no room to exist. You saturate your consciousness with the new assumption until it's all you know. Here's how you do it. Choose a day, preferably a day off or a quiet weekend day, where you can be relatively undisturbed. From the moment you wake up, you're going to stay in character as the person who has your desire, not pretending, embodying. If your desire is financial abundance, you wake up and before you even get out of bed, you feel the relief of knowing money isn't a concern. You stretch and think about what you might do today, and none of it is limited by budget. As you make coffee, you're not worried. You're relaxed. You're someone for whom resources are easy. You might even play a little game where you look at things in your home and mentally note, I could buy that 10 times over if I wanted. Throughout the day, every decision you make is from that identity. You don't actually have to spend money you don't have. This isn't about being irresponsible, but the energy you bring to every moment is abundance. Maybe you take yourself to a cafe and order exactly what you want without looking at the price. Maybe you browse a store you normally avoid because it's too expensive, and you let yourself enjoy looking without the energetic contraction of I can't afford this. You're just appreciating, because people with money appreciate things too. They just don't have the charge around it. You spend the whole day saturated in this state. And when old thoughts come up, the ones that say, but you're pretending, this isn't real, you gently redirect. I'm not pretending. I'm practicing. I'm training my consciousness. I'm becoming. By the end of the day, that state feels normal. You've spent 8, 10, 12 hours in it, and something shifts. Your subconscious starts to accept it as reality. Do this once a week for a month, and watch what happens. You can do assumption saturation for any desire. Confidence. Spend a day moving through the world as someone who is deeply self-assured. Notice how you walk, how you speak, how you interact. Don't perform confidence for others. Just be it for yourself. Love? Spend a day feeling deeply loved. Maybe you imagine your ideal partner is thinking about you throughout the day. Maybe you treat yourself with the care and attention you'd receive from them. Health? Spend a day in the energy of vitality. Move your body with appreciation. Eat nourishing food as an act of celebration, not restriction. Feel grateful for your body's strength and resilience. The key is total immersion, no breaks. No checking your phone and falling down a social media comparison hole. No conversations with people who pull you into their lack. This day is sacred. It's a full commitment to occupying the state you want to be your default. And the beautiful thing is, the more you do these saturation days, the less you need them, because the state starts to stick. It bleeds into your regular days without effort. Let's go even deeper now into handling the emotional component of this work. Because assumption isn't just mental, it's deeply emotional. And a lot of people get stuck here. They can intellectually understand that they should assume the wish fulfilled, but emotionally, they're terrified. Terrified of being disappointed again. Terrified of wanting something and not getting it. Terrified of looking stupid for believing in something that doesn't manifest. This fear is valid, and it needs to be acknowledged, not bypassed. So let's talk about building emotional resilience in your assumption practice. The first step is to make friends with your fear. Stop treating it as the enemy. Fear is information. It's your system saying, I've been hurt before, and I don't want to be hurt again. So instead of trying to bulldoze through fear with forced positivity, have a conversation with it. Sit quietly and ask your fear, what are you protecting me from? Listen to what comes up. Maybe it says, if you really believe this will happen and it doesn't, you'll be devastated. Okay, thank your fear for caring about you. Then offer it a new perspective. What if the devastation comes not from the desire not manifesting, but from abandoning myself in the process? What if the real pain is from giving my power away, not from an outcome? This reframe changes everything, because now you're not trying to control whether the desire manifests. You're committing to staying true to your new assumption regardless. You're saying, I'm going to believe this about myself because it feels better than the alternative. I'm going to occupy this state because I deserve to experience it, even if only in my inner world. And if it doesn't externalize the way I think it should, I'll still have spent days, weeks, months living from a more empowered place. That's not failure. That's growth. When you approach it this way, the stakes lower. You're not gambling your emotional well-being on an outcome. You're investing in a state of consciousness that serves you no matter what. And paradoxically, when you release the outcome in this way, it becomes easier for it to manifest, because you're not gripping it with fear. You're holding it with open hands. Here's a practice for building emotional resilience. Every day, spend 2 minutes in worst-case scenario planning. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me. Sit down and ask yourself, what if my desire doesn't manifest? What if I assume and nothing changes? Let yourself feel that possibility. Let the fear come up, and then ask, would I survive that? The answer is always yes. You'd be disappointed, maybe grieving, but you'd survive. You'd adjust. You'd find a new desire. Life would go on. Once you've fully felt that and acknowledged your resilience, you can return to your assumption without the desperate edge. Without the energy of I need this or I'll fall apart. Because you won't fall apart. You're stronger than that. And that strength gives you the freedom to fully commit to the assumption without hedging, without one foot out the door. You're all in because you trust yourself to handle any outcome. Let's bring in another real-life example. A woman named Patricia wanted to heal her relationship with her adult daughter. They'd been estranged for 3 years after a painful falling out. Patricia tried everything. She'd apologized, sent letters, given space, nothing worked. Her daughter wouldn't respond. Patricia was heartbroken. When she started learning about assumption, she decided to apply it here. She assumed her daughter had forgiven her. She assumed they had a warm, loving relationship. Every night she imagined a phone call where her daughter's voice was soft and kind. She revised past arguments. She held her daughter in the highest possible assumption. But months went by. Nothing. No call. No text. Patricia started to doubt. She felt the old grief rising. She was terrified she was fooling herself. So she did the worst-case scenario practice. She sat with the possibility that her daughter might never reconcile. She let herself cry. She acknowledged the pain. And then she asked herself, can I still assume love and forgiveness, even if she never speaks to me again? Can I hold her in that light not to manipulate an outcome, but because I choose to see her through love rather than hurt? The answer was yes, and that shift changed everything. Patricia stopped assuming for a specific outcome. She started assuming for her own peace. She forgave herself. She blessed her daughter from a distance. She chose to live in a reality where love was possible even in the absence of contact. And then, 8 months into her practice, her daughter reached out. Not with a grand gesture, just a simple text. "Hi, Mom. I've been thinking about you." They started slowly. A few messages, then a phone call, then a coffee meetup. Today, 2 years later, they talk every week. Patricia believes the healing happened not because she manipulated her daughter through assumption, but because she changed her own energy so completely that there was space for her daughter to soften. She stopped holding her daughter in the prison of the past. Let's address one more common struggle: comparison. You're doing the work, but you see someone else manifesting faster, or you see someone who isn't doing any inner work at all and they seem to have everything. This can trigger massive doubt. Why is it working for them and not me? Am I broken? Am I doing it wrong? Here's what you need to understand. You don't know what assumptions other people are holding. You don't know what work they've done in past lives or in private moments. You don't know what their soul came here to experience. Their timeline is not your timeline. Their manifestations are not your manifestations. The only person you need to compare yourself to is who you were yesterday. Are you holding your assumption more consistently than you were last week? Are you returning to the wish-fulfilled state faster when you slip? Are you catching your old patterns earlier? If yes to any of these, you're progressing. That's all that matters. Besides, often the people who seem to manifest effortlessly are just naturally assuming well. They're not consciously doing anything. They just have a different baseline. They grew up with different conditioning. They absorbed empowering beliefs early. Good for them, but that doesn't mean you can't build that same baseline through conscious practice. You're actually doing something more impressive. You're rewiring against your conditioning. You're choosing empowerment when everything in your history says to expect limitation. That takes courage. That takes commitment. Honor yourself for that. Here's a practice for releasing comparison. When you notice yourself comparing, pause. Take a breath. Then say, "Their success is not my failure. There's infinite abundance. Their manifestation doesn't diminish mine." Then immediately think of one piece of evidence from your own life that your assumption is working, even something tiny. Redirect your attention from their journey to your own. This trains your brain to stop the comparison spiral before it derails you. Over time, you'll actually start to feel genuinely happy when you see others manifesting, because you'll know it's proof that the law works. And if it works for them, it works for you. Their win becomes your encouragement rather than your trigger. Now let's talk about group consciousness and how it affects your personal assumption work. You exist in a collective field. Your family has assumptions. Your culture has assumptions. Your country, your generation, your social circle, they all have dominant beliefs about what's possible, what's normal, what's deserved. And these collective assumptions can feel very heavy. It can feel like you're swimming upstream against a powerful current. Everyone around you believes relationships are hard. Everyone believes you have to struggle to make money. Everyone believes getting older means declining health. And here you are trying to assume something different. This is real. The collective consciousness does exert pressure. But here's what you need to remember. You are not bound by it. You can exist in a collective field and choose a different personal reality. It's absolutely possible. But it requires vigilance. You have to actively guard your consciousness from absorbing beliefs that don't serve you. This means being selective about what media you consume. If you're trying to assume abundance and you're constantly watching news about economic collapse, you're working against yourself. If you're assuming health and vitality and you're in online groups where people bond over illness, you're making it harder. I'm not saying ignore reality or live in a bubble. I'm saying be strategic about what you allow into your consciousness, especially in the early stages when your new assumption is still fragile. As your assumption becomes more solid, you'll be able to encounter contradictory information without being swayed. But until then, protect your mental diet like you'd protect your body from poison. Because in a very real sense, disempowering beliefs are poison to your manifestation. Here's something powerful you can do. Create an assumption pod. This is a small group of people, even just one other person, who are also practicing assumption-based living. You check in with each other regularly. You share wins. You support each other through doubts. You remind each other of the truth when the 3D gets loud. Having even one person who believes in this with you, who's speaking the same language, who won't look at you like you're crazy when you talk about living from the wish fulfilled, that's gold. That accountability and support can make all the difference. If you don't have anyone in your life who's into this, find them online. There are communities everywhere now of people doing this work. You don't have to do it alone. Let me tell you about 3 friends, Emma, Jordan, and Keisha, who formed an assumption pod. They'd all learned about these principles separately but realized they had a shared interest. They started a weekly video call, 30 minutes. Each person shared one assumption they were working with that week, one piece of evidence it was manifesting, and one moment of doubt they needed support with. That was it. Simple structure. But the impact was profound. Emma was working on assuming she was a successful artist. Every week she'd share evidence. A gallery reached out. Someone commissioned a piece. She sold a painting. And when she had doubts, when she wondered if she was deluding herself, Jordan and Keisha would remind her of all the evidence that had already shown up. They held the vision when she couldn't. Jordan was assuming he was in excellent health after a scary diagnosis. Week by week, he shared improvements, energy returning, test results improving, symptoms diminishing. And when fear gripped him, when the medical establishment spoke doom, Emma and Keisha reminded him of his power. They assumed his health with him. Keisha was assuming she was worthy of love after a brutal divorce. She was practicing seeing herself as desirable, whole, valuable. Every week she shared moments where she caught herself in the old story and shifted. And when she went on a bad date and wanted to spiral into maybe I'm unlovable, Emma and Jordan held up a mirror. They reflected back her worthiness until she could see it again herself. Within a year, all three had manifested their desires. But more than that, they'd built a bond based on mutual empowerment. They'd proven to each other that this isn't just theory. It's real, it works, and having witnesses to your transformation, people who can say I saw you assume and I watched reality rearrange itself, that solidifies your faith in ways nothing else can. So find your pod, or create one. It doesn't have to be formal or complicated. Just honest, regular connection with people who are on the same path. Now let's get into some advanced territory. What do you do when you have multiple desires? How do you assume them all without getting overwhelmed? This is a common question. People feel like they have to choose. Do I focus on manifesting money or love or health or career? The answer is you don't have to choose. But you do have to understand that all your desires are really one desire. They're all pointing toward a state. When you want money, what you really want is the feeling money gives you. Security, freedom, ease. When you want a relationship, what you really want is the feeling of being loved, seen, valued, connected. When you want health, you want vitality, peace, trust in your body. So instead of trying to assume 10 different things, assume the core state underneath them all. Assume you are someone who is abundant, loved, healthy, fulfilled. Let that be your primary assumption. And then the specific manifestations become expressions of that state, rather than separate goals you're chasing. This is why I recommend that people identify their primary state. If you could only choose one way to feel for the rest of your life, what would it be? Peaceful, powerful, joyful, free, loved? Choose one word that represents the essence of what all your desires would give you. Now make that your primary assumption. I am peaceful. I am powerful. I am free. Whatever your word is, saturate yourself in that state. And watch how all your specific desires start to unfold from that place. They're not separate anymore. They're all branches from the same root. This also prevents you from falling into the trap of manifesting one thing and then immediately chasing the next in an endless cycle of never being satisfied. When you assume a state rather than a thing, you can be fulfilled now, and the things come as natural expressions of that fulfillment rather than requirements for it. Let me share a woman named Alana who did this brilliantly. She had a long list of desires: better job, more money, weight loss, social confidence, a romantic partner, closer family relationships. She was exhausting herself trying to work on all of them. Then she asked herself the core state question: what's underneath all of these? And she realized they all pointed to one feeling: worthy. She wanted to feel worthy. She believed the job would make her worthy. The weight loss would make her worthy. The relationship would make her worthy. But those were all external validations of an internal state she hadn't claimed yet. So she stopped trying to manifest the list. She started assuming worthiness. I am worthy. Not because of what I have or how I look or who loves me. I am inherently worthy. Period. She practiced that assumption daily. She revised memories where she felt unworthy. She made decisions from worthiness. She spoke to herself with worthiness. She moved through the world as someone who knew their value. And within 6 months, every single thing on her list had manifested or was actively manifesting. The job opportunity came. The weight started coming off effortlessly. She found herself naturally. I'll tell you about a woman named Simone who manifested her dream job but almost lost it immediately because she wasn't prepared to receive it well. She'd been unemployed for months. She did the assumption work. She visualized. She held the state. And then she got an offer from a company she'd admired for years. Amazing salary, perfect role, everything she wanted. She was ecstatic for about 3 days. Then the doubt crept in. Why did they choose me? What if I can't actually do this job? What if they realize they made a mistake? What if I'm not good enough? She started having panic attacks. She almost called them to decline the offer before she even started. Thankfully, she reached out to me first. I asked her, "Did you ever practice receiving this job? Did you ever visualize yourself succeeding in it, feeling confident being valued?" She hadn't. She'd only visualized getting the offer. She'd never gone beyond that to imagine actually thriving in the role. So we did that work. Every day before she started, she visualized herself at the job, competent and calm. She imagined her boss praising her work. She imagined herself solving problems easily. She revised her panic attacks, replacing them with scenes of confidence. By the time she started, she was ready. And she excelled. But it was close. She almost sabotaged the very thing she'd manifested because she hadn't prepared herself to receive it. Don't make that mistake. Part of your assumption work should always include the receiving part. Imagine yourself with the desire and thriving. Imagine yourself handling it well. Imagine yourself worthy of keeping it. This completes the circuit. Otherwise, you might manifest something only to repel it immediately because your self-concept hasn't caught up to your desire. Now let's talk about the integration phase. This is what happens after you've been practicing assumption-based living for months or years. The principles start to become second nature. You don't have to remind yourself to assume anymore. You just do it automatically. You catch yourself in old patterns within seconds. You return to the wish-fulfilled state effortlessly. This is mastery, and it looks like ease. It looks like flow. It looks like life is just working for you. But here's what people don't realize. The integration phase isn't about everything being perfect. It's about having unshakable trust even when things aren't perfect. It's about knowing so deeply that your consciousness creates your reality, that temporary circumstances don't throw you off center. You have a bad day, but you don't spiral. You have a setback, but you don't question everything. You simply adjust, assume better, and keep moving. The integrated version of you knows that you're always manifesting. There's no on or off. You're either manifesting consciously or unconsciously, but you're always creating. So you pay attention. You take responsibility, and you course correct quickly when needed. This is spiritual maturity. This is what the work builds toward. Not a life without challenges, but a life where you trust your ability to create your way through any challenge. Where you know that no circumstance is permanent unless you assume it to be. Where you understand that you're never stuck, you're only in the process of shifting. Let me tell you about a man named Daniel who reached this integration phase and how it played out for him. He'd been practicing assumption for 3 years. He'd manifested a successful business, a beautiful home, great relationships. Life was good. Then his business partner embezzled money. Significant money, enough to potentially destroy everything they'd built. The old Daniel would have panicked, would have felt victimized, would have spiraled into worst-case scenarios. But integrated Daniel took a breath. He felt the shock, the anger, the fear. He didn't bypass those emotions. But he didn't set up camp in them either. He felt them, acknowledged them, and then he asked himself, what do I want to assume about this situation? He decided to assume that this betrayal was actually redirecting him toward something better. That the money would be recovered or replaced. That his business would not only survive, but thrive. That he was protected and provided for even in crisis. He held these assumptions while also taking practical action. Lawyer, accountant, damage control. But his actions came from a place of trust rather than panic. He wasn't scrambling. He was handling. And within 4 months, everything had resolved better than he could have imagined. He got a huge contract that more than covered the loss. He brought on a new partner who was infinitely more aligned. He restructured the business in ways that made it stronger. Looking back, he said the betrayal was one of the best things that ever happened to him because it forced an evolution he'd been avoiding. But he could only see that because he didn't let the circumstance define his reality. He assumed a better outcome and stayed in that assumption until it manifested. That's integration. That's mastery. So where are you on this journey? Are you just learning these principles for the first time? Are you practicing but still struggling with consistency? Are you starting to see evidence but not quite trusting it yet? Are you in the integration phase where it's becoming your new normal? Wherever you are, honor it. This is a process. There's no rushing it. There's no skipping steps. Every doubt you face is teaching you something. Every time you return to your assumption after slipping, you're building strength. Every piece of evidence you receive is reinforcing your faith. You're exactly where you need to be. And the beautiful thing is, the journey itself is the transformation. You're not waiting to become someone different when your desire manifests. You're becoming that person now through the practice of assuming. The manifestation is just confirmation of who you've already claimed to be. Let's bring this to a close with a final practice. I want you to write yourself a permission slip. Literally write it out. I give myself permission to assume the wish fulfilled. I give myself permission to live from the end instead of the circumstances. I give myself permission to claim a reality that doesn't match my current evidence. I give myself permission to trust my consciousness as the creative power in my life. I give myself permission to receive all the good that's coming to me. I give myself permission to be powerful, abundant, loved, successful, healthy, free. Write whatever permissions you need to give yourself. Then read it out loud. Let your voice carry the authority of your own commitment. And keep that permission slip somewhere you can see it. Because you will need to remind yourself. You will have moments where you forget you're allowed to do this, where you slip back into waiting for external permission or validation. And in those moments, you can read your own words back to yourself. You already gave yourself permission. Now honor that. As we truly close now, I want to acknowledge you for being here, for being willing to explore these ideas, for being open to the possibility that you're more powerful than you've been taught. That's not a small thing. The world will constantly try to convince you that you're at the mercy of circumstances, that you're lucky or unlucky, that life happens to you. Choosing to believe that you're the operant power in your reality, that your assumptions create your experience, that you can live from the wish fulfilled and watch reality conform, that's a radical act. That's reclaiming your sovereignty. And not everyone is ready for that responsibility, but you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So trust yourself. Trust this process. Trust that what you assume in consciousness must harden into fact in time. The lag might test you. The 3D might try to convince you otherwise. Doubt might whisper that you're fooling yourself. But you know the truth now. You've heard it. You've felt it. And something in you recognizes it as true. That recognition is everything. That's your inner knowing saying, yes, this is how it works. Listen to that voice above all others. Your life is about to change in ways you can't fully imagine yet. Not because you're going to try harder. Not because you're going to do more, but because you're going to assume better. You're going to occupy states of consciousness that reflect who you truly are and what you truly deserve. And reality, in its infinite responsiveness, will mirror that back to you. The evidence will come. The bridge will build itself. The synchronicities will multiply. And one day, maybe 6 months from now, maybe a year, you'll look around at your life and barely recognize it. You'll see that every desire you held has manifested or is actively manifesting. And you'll realize that it wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was you. It was always you. Assuming and receiving. Claiming and allowing. Being and becoming. This is your inheritance. This is your power. This is your birthright as a conscious being. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for proof. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Assume your wish is fulfilled right now. Live from that place. Make decisions from that identity. Speak from that knowing. And watch as the universe bends to accommodate your assumption. Because it has no choice. Consciousness is the only reality. And you are the one determining what that reality contains. Welcome home to your power. Welcome to the shortcut. Assume and receive. It's already done.